I wanted to talk today about the future of money, which is something that I'm speculating about. And I don't necessarily advocate for everything I'm saying. I just running through speculations. Because what we're seeing right now under this current time is that we're currently under the COVID 19, where they're shutting down businesses and it's spreading throughout the country. And then the Congress is fighting over how much money they should try to help out the people who are unemployed with and so forth. And they just did one bill for a couple $1 trillion on the federal budget, and then they're going to do another bill soon with at least another $1 trillion added onto the federal budget. And the budget is something like $17 trillion in the whole, over, collected over time. And we've been listening, depending upon which is the in party and which is the out party. Everybody complains that this deficit is way too high, and that they're going to blame the other side that's in charge. And then when the other side gets in charge, then the side that's out of charge, blames the other side. It's kind of like that Bugs Bunny cartoon, where Yosemite Sam and Bugs Bunny are sitting across the table from each other, and Yosemite Sam puts poison into Bugs's drink, and then Bugs spins the table around, and it's on Yosemite Sam's side. Then he spins the table around. Then they spin the table around, and depending upon which side you're on, you're going to blame the other side for the giant deficit. And in the meantime, nothing really deficit minded ever goes on, except they keep adding to it. And if you want to argue that point, saying, oh, it's the Democrats' fault for putting in all these freebies for the poor people, and then the Democrats say, oh, it's the Republicans' fault for cutting taxes on the wealthy people. And whoever its fault it is, the end result is always the same, that we see the deficit just going up and up and up every year. And at the same time, a couple other things are happening. One is that the inflation rate just seems to be low, which I'm not sure why that is. It could be because of globalism, possibly. We're buying cheaper products overseas, and they're getting cheaper and cheaper as more and more poor people overseas are able to get jobs in manufacturing and then send cheap products to the United States to sell. So the United States is putting everything on the credit card and then buying foreign products. And that brings up the standard of living in a lot of third world countries. But somewhere along the line, you have to fear that what we're going to end up with is some kind of inflation that we can't control. That's probably the biggest fear that a lot of people have. But let's look at inflation. Right now, inflation has been low. At the end of the last administration, the interest rates the Federal Reserve was giving out was at zero. So they were selling U.S. bonds at zero rates. So every dollar you spent, you got a dollar back. And people were buying those bonds because they were afraid of other things that might deflate instead. So what that does is it makes it easy to finance a deficit, because in the long run, let's say you're paying very low rates on those interests on those bonds, then when there is inflation in the future, which there always has been before, then you got to consider that those dollars are going to be paid back in inflated dollars. So it almost is a good deal for the United States to borrow that money, because they're not going to pay it back. A dollar today might be worth half of what a dollar tomorrow is worth, or double of what a dollar tomorrow is worth. So you're paying back this expensive dollars with cheap dollars, and that's seems to be where the deficits are going. So we're financing our free stuff on, they say it's on the backs of our children, but not really. It's on the backs of whoever buys those bonds, because they're going to get paid back in inflated dollars in the future. So, well, that's. But what about the future of money? How, the question I'm wondering about is, there's another thing happening in money as well, and that is that the dollar is actually disappearing. The actual cash money is disappearing. They're more and more doing something called digital money, whereas you don't actually hold a dollar in your hand. And I don't know what percentage of people in the United States are using only digital money. I know I'm mostly using only digital money. That is, there's money credited to your account in the bank, and then you go to the store and you pull out a card and you put it in their little machine, and it takes those credits out of the bank depending on how much you bought. I mean, I know it's a little scary because you're thinking people, these hackers could get into your accounts and all that. Maybe so. But that's beside the point. The real point is that the actual dollars are starting to become obsolete. And I think in the future they'll become more obsolete. They have right now, they have these Amazon stores that you walk into where you just have a thing in your pocket, your phone, and when you walk in the door, it reads your phone that you came in the door. You walk into the store, you take something off the shelf, and you walk out. You don't pay at the cash register. It automatically subtracts the money out of your account because it was able to see your account as you walked in the door. And then they, of course, in the future, they have retina scans as well. They're talking about, and fingerprint scans, which, I have a fingerprint thing on my phone now. So, yeah, that's the future of money, is also that there will be no more actual handheld money, or very little. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of the money that's currently being passed around as dollar bills, U.S. dollar bills, are being passed around in a lot of third world countries where their money is not worth hardly anything. And if you really want to buy anything, they'll take American dollars in a second. They don't want to buy something in Venezuela because what was worth, a dollar was worth a dollar today. Tomorrow it's worth only 30 cents. So what they'd rather have are those U.S. dollars, and the U.S. dollars maintain their value. Now, the future of money, and I know this is something that people say I'm promoting. I'm not. I'm just saying this may come to this. I think there's going to be more of a globalist version of the future of money. In other words, since we're not really having actual dollars being printed and handed back and forth, what they won't even call it dollars in the future. What it'll be is some kind of mega bank that just holds units, and you pass it around. If you may have more units than anybody else, or several bank accounts that have many units, and so all you have to do is walk into a place and scan your retina, and you can buy anything you want. That is the future of money. And there's not going to be a dollars and euros and yen and shekels and pesos. There's going to be just these digital units that are banked in the bank and so forth. And that is possibly the future of money. But what's also the future of money, that at the same time as that is existing, what we're seeing is who's going to be controlling those central banks that owns all those units. And I see under globalism, they're fighting against the dollar in certain places right now. Iran doesn't want the dollar to be the petrodollar, and they don't want, a lot of China doesn't want the dollar to be the dollar. So what probably, and I'm not positive, but probably will happen in the future is that these barriers, these national borders will come down. They're going to come down first in a capitalist way. Corporations right now move across, the lines of nations without much notice. And that's what's going to be for everybody in the future. We're going to see that there's going to be just a few units. So there'll be the yen, probably the Chinese yen might be one of them, right? But there'll be the US dollar and maybe the euro, and then maybe eventually the pound and the US dollar will become one. And so there'll be like 3 units, and maybe eventually the euro and the dollar will become 1 unit, and they won't even call it a dollar or a euro anymore. They'll call it a unit, I think, or something. And and that will be that will start the barriers of the national borders to come down, because the first thing that makes a nation, I think, is the agreed upon financial situation. The interstate commerce clause. And originally, when the United States came out, they had many states that were printing their own dollars and their own money. And it was one of the reasons that they made the Constitution, was because they needed to have a more organized system of finances. So they got rid of every state printing their own money. They have one central treasury note that they printed out from the whole country. Well, since now the corporations are international anyway, and there's not that much real dollars being passed around, it may come to just one central unit that's based around, an agreed upon value in all the banks. It would make, you know, it would make the life a lot simpler, because when you go from place to place, you hand in your American dollar in Canada, and they give you back Canadian dollars. Well, you know, if they just had units, everybody could just cross across the border, and the units would be universal. And I think that's the future of money. That is a step toward less national borders and more of a international government. And I know a lot of people hate that idea. I don't know if I favor it, I don't favor it, but I see it coming. I see it coming. It's going to be led by corporations, by capitalism, it's going to be a lot less complicated for capitalist companies to be able to cross borders if they don't have to adhere to different monetary values and different kind of banking laws and different kind of taxing laws. So what we're going to end up doing is just becoming, and people don't think that's inevitable, but I see the world as becoming smaller and smaller. It used to be that Europe was 25, 30 different countries not that long ago. It used to be that what is now China was about 5 countries, and of course the United States took over the entire continent within the last 150 years. So yeah, things are moving fast now, and I think it is probable that we're going to see more internationalism, especially with these universal translators that they have now. You can wear a thing on your head, and if you go to somewhere where they speak Arabic, you just turn it on, and they speak Arabic in your ear, and it comes out English. Then you speak it in your mouthpiece, and it comes out on your speaker as Arabic. And that kind of stuff is occurring more and more too. The computers are changing the world into a more what do you call it, a one world government. Thank you.